Hello everyone! The poster is already finished, you can see it here. However, I decided to not go through the whole process of making the poster and show you every detail, because we changed a lot of things several times. So it would be very boring and repetitive for you to watch the whole process. Therefore, I rather decided to give you short summaries of every key step in the poster making process. So today we will take a look at flowcharts with Adobe Illustrator. This will also be very useful if you are a beginner for Illustrator, because we're going to cover all the basics as well. We're going to make this flowchart here today, and I will also show you how to perfectly integrate this into InDesign so you have the same font size as well. We are going to learn how to trace one of those insects using the pencil tool, and also we're going to make a lot of those figures using the pen tool and basic shapes. By using the align and also pathfinder function, we're going to create very nice vector graphics. So let's get started. We start our tutorial inside of InDesign, because in here we want to go to this blue background in here and want to copy the dimensions. So the width of this one is around 253 millimeters. So we're going to copy this one here, and now we're going to create a spread inside of Illustrator that will have the same dimensions. This way, the text size of our flowchart will be consistent with the text size we have down here. So this is the flowchart we want to make today. For now, I'm going to delete this one. And now I would also make a screenshot. You can do this on a Mac by pressing Command, Shift and 3. And now I can put this one into Illustrator as well, to have a reference how much space I have for the actual flowchart. Let's go into Illustrator, and in here we create a new file. You want to make sure it's for print, and in here we just paste in our width, like that. The height can be maybe a little bit bigger, like 400. We figure out those things later on. We can click on OK. And now we can go on our desktop to get our screenshot. This is the one over here. And we take it and put it into Illustrator. If we now move this one a little bit, we see that we might need to rescale it a little bit. So let's do this. I press the Shift key to keep the proportions. And now I can try to position this one on the lines of our little spread. So the blue box should have the same dimension as the background in here. This should be fine. We can zoom out again. And the first thing you might want to do is to get rid of all these things around. So to do this, we select this one here. This is a basic box. And we just drag it out so we have the basic thing we are interested in. And here's the first nice trick. You can select both our rectangle and the picture, and we go on right click, make clipping mask. This way everything around will be clipped away. Now we can also go to our layers panel, and we're going to lock this layer. This way we're not messing anything up in here anymore. We need now to create a new layer where we can actually edit things again. And also I would recommend to now adapt the size of our spread. We can do this with this button down here. And we just set it so it fits nicely to our actual area. We can go to the select tool again and zoom in. Now we can get started with the actual flowchart. By the way, if you are missing any of the menus on the side here, you can find them under Window. Just select some in here. Now we can get started with our insect that we want to trace. For doing that, I have prepared a sample picture that you can use. You find it in the link in the description below. If you would have some organisms that you would work on, you can just use them from Google, or maybe you have also your own pictures. Always make sure you're not breaking any copyright laws. But the picture I'm providing today is my own, so you are welcome to use it. Let me import this picture into Illustrator. You can just drag and drop the picture. And then we have our nice Dinocrust cephalotus. Let's zoom out a bit. And I always push those to the side. I think we should also reduce the size of this one. And now to get rid of this gray background, we can just go on View, Overprint, Preview, so it's a little bit nicer to look at. This one, I would rotate this by 90 degrees. I press the Shift key to get a 90-degree rotation. And then at the moment this is not on our background layer, so I'm going to unlock this one. And by moving this square, we can move this Dinocross insect to another layer. Now I'm going to lock this one again and switch to the layer 2. And now I can basically draw on top of this insect. Let's zoom in. And also you might have noticed if I draw something, you get these fancy lines. This is actually called smart guides and very useful for doing layout, but at the moment I don't want this. So you can activate and deactivate those under View, Smart Guides. Now those lines are gone and I can draw and move around freely without having anything snap to other objects. Now you can take the pen tool. This is basically a nice tool to draw some lines. And you see right now it's only a vector line which does not have any stroke. So we can click here to increase the stroke width. And if you draw now, it has a width of 2. Maybe we change this back to 1. This is nice for drawing. Let's discuss how this tool is working. I'm drawing this one with the mouse at the moment. And as long as I don't have this little X down here, I will change the line. So if I draw now again, I can redefine how the line looks. If I get an X, if I move away from the line itself, I will create a new line. For now we can delete all of those again and we zoom in a little bit further. Keep in mind that our insect in the final figure will be just under 1 centimeter big, so we should not be too accurate here. This sketch can be very rough. So I'm going to take my pen tool. Maybe you also want to change the color to, for example, red or maybe a blue. So for now you can distinguish it better from the background of the insect. This should be fine for now, and you now just go ahead and trace the insect itself. We're going first for the head, something like this. This, as I told you, is not perfectly accurate, but totally fine for our purposes. Now I'm going to move down further on the body. And you see here I have some overlap and this is not closed, but we are not going to worry about this at the moment. I'm drawing the circles in a way that I have nice overlap of all the body parts. If we now take a look at this part here, this will look very weird. So you might want to change those things. And you have now basically two choices. You have two kinds of selection tools. You have the normal selection tool. This will allow you to select separate objects, the complete thing. And then we have this other selection tool. This is a direct selection tool. And with this, I can actually select the different vector points on my vector line. And on the handles here, you can also manipulate the movement of the line. So by pulling those, you can drag it out more or less. Another tool that might come in handy if your hand is a little bit shaky is the smooth line tool. So you can first select a line and then use the smooth tool and draw around this line. So you see now this is smoothing the line out a little bit more. Now you can go ahead and use all those tools to make a rough sketch of this insect. I'm switching back to the pen tool, just click and hold to switch between those things. And now I continue drawing. I did not want to have both shapes being merged, so I'm just going to undo this. Those parts here are always a little bit tricky, so I use the direct selection tool again to make the line width a little bit better. And then I use the smooth tool to make the line a little bit smoother. An alternative way of doing this would also be to just draw one line, like this. And then you can select this tool over here, the width tool. And now you can select one point on your line and just drag to increase the size. However, this way, the inside of those lines cannot be colored. So you need to decide for yourself if you want to use this in this case or not. For now, this should be fine, and we can continue with our legs. Yeah, but maybe here the width tool will come in handy. This should already be fine for now, so we can zoom out and see our result. And now we select the whole thing. And we're actually going to change the fill to, for example, white. The stroke should remain black. I of course need to exclude those two. They should not have a fill because this is just a single line. And to get the orientation of all the things right, we need now to arrange our different objects. So we're going to select some of the parts, and with arrange, we're going to send them to the back. We also want to get those legs in the background, and also those things here. We see now here we have a little gap. I would also want to get rid of this. So I zoom in, and I take the direct selection tool and just drag those out a little bit more. This might not be perfect, but it will do the job. Let's zoom out again. And now I also think we should give those some eyes with the ellipse tool. We can make a little ellipse and then position it somewhere on here. Maybe we hide the white for now to get the position of the eyes right. And by pressing the Alt key, I can actually copy this. So I'm dragging it right now, and I hold the Alt key, and when I let go now, it will copy the object. I rotate this on the corner, and now we can give this one back its white. There we have our basic dinocross, and we can zoom out. I see we need to move back the legs here as well. And now we can color the whole thing. Therefore we select the center part, and we select some nice brown colors. If you want to copy some color from another object, you can press I or use the eyedropper tool over here and just click on the object you want to take the color from, like this. Now I press V again to switch to the selection tool. Let's zoom on our insect. Maybe we should change the eyes to black. And also we're going to use the smooth tool to smooth out the antenna a little bit more. Also the second one, and this should be fine. Now we can select the whole thing and press Command G to group it. Of course, this is a little bit too big at the moment. Let's see what we got here. We take our insect from here, and again I press Alt to copy it down here. And now we can set and transform if we want to scale the actual strokes and effects. So if you activate this, your lines will get very, very thin. So we can try this for now maybe. And I press the Shift key to keep the proportion of the insect. The final size of the insect will be something like this. And we can zoom in here. And I think now the lines are maybe a little bit too thin. So we can select the whole thing. And now I can access this group. I don't need to dissolve the group. I can access it by double clicking on the object. And now you see I'm inside of the group. And now I can select those things. And I press the Shift key and click on the antenna over here. And now I have only selected the colored parts of this object. Let's try maybe 0.5 or maybe 0.25 is a nice size. And we can press Escape to leave our group. Let's zoom out again. And I think this will be just fine. Maybe you could also use a stroke size of 0.5, but this is really up to you. Actually, when I'm looking at this, I would add some more detail, maybe on the back of this insect. So using the pen tool, and we deselect it again and remove the color in here. So now if we use the pen tool, we can just draw little lines like this to give it a little bit more of a structure. It does not need to be extremely accurate, just to get an idea. You could also go ahead and add now some gills over here where the insect is breathing with. And you notice again I need to switch kind of sides because it would make new ones each time. But this is really up to you how much detail you want to have into your drawing. As I am inside of a group, all the things I do here will be added to the group itself. So if I now escape this one and I move this thing around, it's all grouped. This should be more than enough detail for now, and we can continue with the flowchart. As this method is about meta barcoding, we need some more insects in here, but I'm not going to draw all of them right now again, so I'm just going to copy those from an old file. You can also see here that the insects look a little bit better, and this is because I made those from some drawings and some better pictures. Let me just copy those things here. And those are now grouped, so we can go on right click and select ungroup. Now we have each one in a separate object. Let's zoom in here. If you're wondering how I made this net, I here would also recommend to actually get a picture from the internet and trace it, but I show you how I made this one. So I started by using the pen tool, and then I just drew a round square. I'm dragging while holding on the corners to get this round. Something like this. We select the whole thing, and we can increase the thickness of the lines. Next, we can use the line tool to actually draw a handle on this one. Something like this. If you want to adjust the style of the stroke, you see here it's ending with sharp edges. We can do this in the stroke panel, and we can just click, if we select it first, on this one to give it a round cap. Now we go ahead and take the pencil tool, we set the line width to, for example, 0.5, and you start tracing in here how you think the net should look like. Something like this maybe. This is kind of difficult to do and doesn't look very nice in the end, but you can just try to do it this way or take a nicer net and draw it from there directly. For now I will delete this one and take the one I already got. In here we can replace the old Dino crust with the one we just have drawn. I can also rotate this one. And there we have our first elements for the flowchart. Now it's time to get some text in here. Let's zoom out a bit. And with the text size we should actually go back to InDesign. And as we did set up our Illustrator document in a way that the text size will be the same, we can just take a look on the text size here. This is 19 pt. And if we now go back to Illustrator and write something in here with 19 pt, it will have the same size as the text in InDesign, because the proportions of our drawing area inside of Illustrator do match the ones of InDesign. We did set this up when we created this Illustrator document. To write some text in here, you can click and drag to create a text box, but I would recommend to just take the text cursor and just click somewhere to write. Now we can change the characters. In here you can set the font. Myriad Pro is already the right font, but it sets the text size to 19 pt. Now I will add some descriptions that we need in our flowchart. You can just type in here like that. Then we press Escape to jump out of the text box, and we have already the selection tool activated to move the text around. You can position your text roughly where you want to have it. And now I'm going to add all the other elements of this flowchart. Alright, now we are back and we see that the text here is not very nicely aligned. But to change that, we can select the complete text here. Oh, we have the text box here, we can delete this. We select all of the text and in here we set the align to center. And this makes it look a little bit nicer. If you want, you can also center the text now using the align toolbox. And we're just going to align this very roughly how we want it for now. Now we can add some arrows to show the connection between each element. At least this is a flowchart. To do this, we select the line tool in here and we hold the shift key to draw a straight line like this. And now we can set the stroke to, for example, 3 pt. To add an arrowhead, we're going to go to the line panel and in here we can add an arrowhead like this. Should this arrow be on the wrong side, you can click this button to switch it. In here, you should set the size of the arrow down to, for example, 60% or maybe even 50% to not have it so big. We can now go ahead and also change the color of this arrow to a nice blue. Now I'm going to go ahead and copy this arrow to the positions where I need it. I can use, as always, the Alt key to do this. In here I need to rotate the arrow and I press again the Shift key to get a 90-degree rotation. Alright, here we have our nice arrows and now it's time to add some more elements to visualize this flowchart in a nice way. If we take a look at the original figure, we can see what we can make next, for example. So let's maybe start with this one over here with the identification key. To make this, you can just use simple boxes. And of course, I want to change the color of the stroke back to black and maybe set the size to 1 pt. Now I will be drawing out a box. And inside of this box, there will be another box that will show the insects. I can add some text in here and say EPT key. So people know this is used to identify insects. We can now align those in the center and this looks already quite nice. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab one of those insects. I copy it with Alt and I hold the Shift key while rescaling. We can now use again the clipping mask feature to cut out the insect like this. To do this, we want to copy this one first and then we align it on top of this insect. You can activate Smart Guides by pressing Command U. This will make the alignment a bit easier. We can now select our frame and the insect, go on right click, make clipping mask. Now we also will send this to the back to have the black border around it. You can give the book itself a gray color as a background, something like that. And then we need to send this one to the back as well. Let's select the whole thing and group it. Press Command G to do so. We can give this one a little bit of a tilt. And this is already done. Let's continue with the DNA extraction and PCR. To get some space, we will move some things around here, so we have space to draw our figure. Alright, next we want to create a blender to show that we homologize the whole samples, so all the insects, and then take the DNA from that insect mesh and continue working with the DNA extraction during the PCR. To create our blender, we're going to use the ellipse tool. You can click and hold on the rectangle to access the ellipse tool. And we're going to start with the basic ellipse. You see at the moment, the smart guides are still active with the green line here. So we press Command U to deactivate it. Now I can draw an ellipse. I change the color of the stroke to black and the line width to 1 pt. I can now take this object here and duplicate it again with Alt and scale it down a little bit. Now I align both objects. Let's move this up a little bit maybe. And I also will copy this one more time. We need this later on for the lid. Let's zoom in here. Now I'm going to take the line tool and activate the smart guides again, so I can snap to the corners of those objects. Like this. The reason we are doing this is to get a very nice shape in here, so to merge the whole thing into one shape, basically. So I need to connect those lines, and you can do this by selecting the anchor points of one line and the anchor point of another. I hold the Shift key, I now have both selected, and then here I click this symbol to connect both lines. I do the same thing down here, and I connect it again. And now I can select all of the objects, and I use the Pathfinder tool. First I'm going to use this one, the divide one, and now I ungroup this, and I select the top part and merge it to one shape, and I select all of the bottom parts to merge it to another. You see here you have strange edges going on, so we can take a look at this later. First let's try to make round corners and see if this gets rid of it, and this actually did do the trick. If you take a closer look, you see that this was not perfectly aligned. We could now go ahead and change this. So if we just take the pen tool, we can click on this one and remove one of those points, and this will repair the problem. But you don't need to do this all the time. For these small figures, it might be also fine to keep it how it is. But this is really up to you. Let's also change the stroke thickness to 1 pt on top again. And now we have the basic structure from our blender. We can make a little button that you can press to start the blender. Something like this. We can align it in the center. And now we can also add some text in here. Actually, we can select the button one and copy this one to get a nice path for our text. So we select the type on path tool and click on this path. And now of course we need to reduce the text size. Maybe 10 pt would be nice. And we type in here Blender. We now need to move this one a little bit. And if you see the symbol here, you can move the text around. So something like this should be fine. Then we can scale it down a little bit. And we center it on the button. Next, we need to take care of the lid. And this works pretty much the same way. Maybe let's first give this one a white color. And we will again copy this one and scale it down a bit. Yeah, something like this should be fine. And then we align both in the center, like this. We again take our line tool and then the Pathfinder to make a nice cup. So this should be fine. And now we can zoom out a little bit, and we're going to copy our insects from the top and put them into the blender. We scale those down a bit so they fit. Before we do that, let's actually group this thing. So we press Command G to group it. Something like this should be fine. We're also going to zoom in here and draw a little blade that can mesh our insects. We switch the stroke to 1 pt, and for now we deactivate the smart guides and we try to draw a little blade. If you don't want round corners, you can just click and you will get a very edgy line. In here we need to remove the background and we try to center this one in the center of the machine. Yeah, maybe we give this one a gray color to say it's kind of a metal-y look. And there we have our nice blender. We can select this thing and press Command G to group it one last time. And that is pretty much done. Now we want to get some DNA in here, so some line that looks like a DNA strand. And to do this, we're going to create a new document. Let's zoom in here. And under View, we go on Show Grid. And with this grid, we have an easier time aligning the strokes that we need to make our DNA strand to each other. Let's also make sure we have Snap to Grid activated. Now I'm going to take the pen tool and click and hold like this, and click and hold again. So I make sure the lines here have the same proportions. This thing here I want to select, and I will reflect it. You can do this under Transform, Reflect, and you click on Horizontal. You can go on OK, and now we align it on top of the other one. Now we only need to remove the background here and maybe increase the stroke size to something like maybe 4. We will now go to our brushes panel in here, and if we now select this one and click on New, we can choose to create a new pattern brush. You can leave those things how they are here, or you could also adjust the scale, but for now this should be fine. We click on OK, and it has added our brush in here. If we now draw a new line, something like this, and we select it and now press on this one here, you see we get a nice DNA structure. So we can now go ahead and copy this one and take it back to our figure. We of course want to rescale this one. So we go on Transform and set the width maybe to 50 for now. And now it's easier to handle and to rescale. The thickness of the DNA should be maybe something like maybe 1 pt. You see here you have some little wrinkles, and we can try to remove those using the smooth tool, because the path at the moment is not very smooth. And this is maybe better. So here we have our nice DNA, and we can now go ahead and copy this one as a sign of the PCR. So you copy one of those fragments into several. And to show this, we're going also to add some arrows. You can select this one and change, of course, the thickness. 1.5 should be fine. And we change the color to red. Of course, we want to have some arrowheads in here. And we set this one again to 50%. Like this. Now I'm going to create a new arrow that shows the progress here. And if I press V, I can select this one, and I can press I to get the eyedropper tool, and I copy this arrow from here. So it has the exactly same size. Let's take a look at this. And yeah, this looks quite nice. But now I will switch to the direct selection tool and make some adjustments in here. So maybe this looks a little bit more cleaned up. Alright, and here we have our figure for the DNA extraction and PCR. Next, we will take one of those fragments and copy it to the metabar coding. And in here, of course, we need lots of them. So we copy them further. And here we will visualize the next generation sequencing by a simple circle. And if you click this one here, we can switch the colors. This one should be, of course, white. And we will take the NGS and put it into here. We send this to the back. We can also rescale this one a little bit. And then use, as always, the Align tool to give this a perfect alignment. Let's group this. So we have our DNA going into the next generation sequencing, and then this will give us our DNA sequences. You should be careful sometimes that you have the right stroke sizes. So the strokes on here should be consistent across your whole layout. In this case, I just noticed by scaling I have changed this one to 0.87. So if I double click in here, I can access the group and change this back to 1 pt. Let's maybe also scale down the DNA a little bit. And we show that it goes into the next generation sequencing machine. We send this one to the back. Alright, now it's time to visualize the DNA barcoding. So the actual sequences you get out of the next generation machine. And to do this, it's quite easy to just draw a little barcode. So first, let's get rid of those things here. We select the basic brush type and a stroke width of maybe 2 pt. In here we can have some colors, for example yellow. And now we hold the shift key to draw a straight line. And we're going to select it, and with Alt pressed we're going to copy this several times. Something like this should be fine. We're now going to take another of those lines and change the color, for example to red. Again, we copy this one. We will do this for 2 more colors, green and blue. Now we can select the whole thing. And with the Align tool, we all center them to the button. And then with Distribute Objects, we're going to distribute them in the horizontal line. Let's smash them a little bit together, so we don't have any gaps between those lines. And set this one back to 2 pt. Actually, if you want to avoid rescaling, you always can check this box of Scale, Strokes and Effects. I actually should do that. So this looks now quite nice. We can make it a little bit thinner, like this, and we're going to group the whole thing. Now let's zoom out a bit. And now we can take this one and we need to grab on one of those lines. Actually, I think we should make this a little bit smaller, like this. And now we can take it and move it onto the next generation sequencing machine. So this kind of shows that the DNA sequences get converted into real sequence information that we humans can read. So those are basically the letters A, C, G and T, represented by the colors. We send those to the back, and with the aid of those information and comparison with the database, we can identify our specimens. Actually, I think we should reduce the size of this even further and maybe set the stroke to 1 pt. Something like this should be fine. And if you want to pay attention to some detail, you would also go ahead and change the color of some of those barcodes in here. So you would double click and just select maybe this one and copy the color from another one nearby. Because all of those sequences, or at least some of them, will be different at some positions because they are from different organisms. So something like this should be fine already. You could do this for all your sequences, but in the end no one will notice this on your poster. Or at least I hope no one will look that close. We can save this one now and zoom out. And then we take one of those sequences and we copy it to the CO1 database. In here, you might want to scale this up a little bit more. Yeah, this should be fine. And we need to build our database. Normally, this is just a little drum. Maybe something like this. We change the color, of course, to black. And with the Pathfinder, as we did so many times before, we're going to create this little drum. So this should be fine. We align all objects and also we make sure to distribute them like this. Now we can take a square and we press Command U to activate the smart guides and draw a square like this. We can now select this one and the bottom one and merge those. And here, if you arrange this one to the top, bring to front, and give now those a white color, we have our basic database. We send this to the back, and now we take the direct selection tool and delete those points here. And there we have the typical database structure. Let's select the whole thing and group it. Zoom out a bit and show that the sequences are actually in this database. Maybe you also want to increase the size of this one to something like this and increase the stroke thickness to 1.5 pt, like this. And there we have our nice database. The only thing that is left now is the stream assessment, which is a key aspect of this work. So we deactivate our smart guides again, and we take this round box and draw it around the text. So something like this should be fine. We're going to copy the stroke from here. And of course we want to remove the arrowhead. We set it here to none. And then the roundness of the corners is a little bit too much. So to get rid of that, we zoom out and move it to the side for now. And you need now to take the direct selection tool and make sure you select all corners and pull it out like this. This should be fine. We switch now to the normal selection tool and we're just going to rescale it. Make sure you always hold the Shift key while doing so. Now we can move this back to the text. And we see we still need to rescale it a little bit more. And take those sides here and pull them to the right. Yeah, this should be fine. We center those. And we group it. Let's now zoom in on our things we made here. And just go ahead and group some of the elements. Now we can go ahead and align all of the things with the Align tool. You could also think about reducing the size of some of the arrows, because they might be a little bit too big. Alright, we can save this one, and this figure is basically done. Before we now import this into InDesign, we will get rid of this layer here. We don't need this anymore. And we make sure this is the artboard one, that's fine. And we can just save the whole thing. And now go back to InDesign and import this one from our desktop. Now the trick is to not let it go and click and drag now. You just click once and it will fit this one in the exact size how it should be. So now all the text size is the same as it is in the InDesign file. And that's pretty much it. Let's take a look at this in high quality. Now you know how to make this flowchart. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. This should be all for Illustrator we're going to do in this tutorial series, but you can check out some other Illustrator tutorials I made for the InDesign thesis writing tutorials. Or you can click over here to watch the next part of this poster making tutorial. So, see you there!